Let's challenge ourselves. When you go to our kitchens, what do we see? Do you see this diversity? We don't see the diversity. So what happened? What happened? What happened? What happened? Let's go back to a little bit of history. Kenya, a little bit of history. Kenya, probably somebody else talked about it. Colonialism started in Kenya at the end of the 19th century. You know that, eh? And before colonialism, colonialism was preceded by travels, by Christianity. You know that, eh? You've heard of Graf, who came and established Rabbi Church, eh? And later on came inland to Kitui and back. And Rebman the same, who claimed to have be the person who discovered Kilimanjaro. You know those stories. They are familiar to us. Then after that, colonialism came. Colonialism, you probably know a little bit of history, started with the scramble of Africa. And because European countries wanted to have a share. And they were fighting for the good parts of Africa. They had to meet and agree, what we call the Berlin Conference. And that's when it was decided who goes where. So, of course, you know the story. After the conference, the British were given Kenya. And the Germans got Tanzania. And they put a line, border, starting from Lake Victoria, 1 degree parallel south, Lake Victoria, all the way down. And then at about Kilimanjaro, you turn a little bit. Why? Because the Germans claimed they were the first to Kilimanjaro, discover Kilimanjaro. And then round again to Uba River, Vanga. And so they divided Kenya and Tanzania. Doesn't matter whether you are Maasai, you are in Tanzania, Kenya, it doesn't matter. That was around 1887, 1885, 1887. A little bit of history. Then after that, let's listen. Eh? Then after that, what happened? So the British came. The British didn't have enough manpower, capacity, and so on and so forth. So they got a company to run affairs on the behalf of the British. And the company, one of the things it was given to do, build the railway. The company. So the company was actually the administration to build the railway. Tuko pamoja? So, but the railway didn't start until towards the end of that century, 19th century. So before then, there are a lot of things they were doing. So the company which was given the responsibility to sort of administer Kenya, established its center in Machakos. Machakos was the first capital. Then after some time, it ran bankrupt. And the British appointed another company to come and build the railway. And so the railway line started towards the end, 1999. Mombasa. Where was it to go? Kisumu. That time it was Port Flores. So they built the railway. They built the railway. And so colonialism started in earnest. After the railway, of course, they moved the headquarters from Machakos to Nairobi. Nairobi here, there wasn't much activity. Much activity was in what do we call Dagoretti, because there was a big market where the Maasai used to meet the Kikuyu and the Kambas and trade. There was a big market there. You getting? And so they moved the capital to Nairobi. They moved the capital to Nairobi. So after that, after the railway came, so the colonial government invited settlers from all over the world, Australia, South Africa, wherever, to come and open up Kenya. Tuko pamoja, to open up Kenya. And so the colonial government, I'm talking about the colonial government. The colonial government started, because the settlers came, they had to be given land. And so certain parts of Kenya had to be given out. And don't say the most fertile, because you will be wrong if you say the most fertile. You'll be wrong. Because, of course, what they used to call the White Highlands, a big chunk, like Nyandarua went. But also these plains you are seeing here, what we call the Kapiti, or Kaputei plains, there were no people because it was land preserved. Yatta was land preserved. And even beyond Kitui, what they used to call reserves. It's a reserved land. Now, to create that reserve, because the reserve was being used by people, to create that reserve, the colonial government had to move people. And these are big chunks of land, big chunks of land. They moved people. And they concentrated them in small areas. Like Mua Hills, they moved people and they put them in Iveti Hills and Kima. And then, you know the story. But anyway, the point I want to drive is land was obtained for settlers, people were moved out and concentrated on small pieces of land. Tell me what effect that has. Population density, like this. The animals which they used to graze, to keep, what happened? They were all concentrated on a small area. What followed after that? High population, land degradation came. Land degradation. And then the colonial government saw land degradation, soil erosion, and so on and so forth. And then they started a program of land reclamation, forced labor, to reclaim the land. But now it was too late, because high population of people, cows, what happened? They couldn't feed, of course. So they started a program of culling. So we get the animals. There are too many. You are keeping too many animals. Bring them. You are put people together in one small place. Listen to this. Land degradation. These animals are causing land degradation. Sell them. Bring them. But now, livestock was the source of livelihood for many of these people. Many of these people. So, you give away livestock and you expose that community. You expose that community very seriously. So, let's stop it there a little bit. We'll continue that story. Let's go back to 1989, 87. The railway has passed. The railway has gone. The Dakotas is here. And then, who the Germans got there, Tanzania? The Italians. The Italians wanted Abyssinia then, which is Ethiopia, and they also wanted Somalia. Of course, there was a portion which was British Somaliland, but the Italians wanted Somalia and Abyssinia. The Italians didn't get it easy to get into Ethiopia because there was an unestablished government. So it had to bring the army. Italy He had to bring the army to get into Ethiopia. And if you bring the army, you have to feed the army. Where did they get the cows to feed the army? From Asia. From Asia. They brought the cows from Asia. They brought the cows from Asia. And when the cows came, they brought a disease known as rinderpest. Rinderpest. We are about 1890 or 1889. 1889, 1890. That's where we are now. The cows brought rinderpest. Why? The Indian and Asian cow is resistant to rinderpest. The African cow wasn't. The African cow wasn't. So when they brought the cows to feed the army, what happened? There was a breakout of rinderpest in Ethiopia. Ethiopia is up there, but further north. And the rinderpest spreads like fire. Within 1 or 2 years, it swept all the way down. And within 2 years, it was at the tip of South Africa. Just like this, it affects livestock, it affects wildlife. Huh? So a lot of the wildlife, a lot of the cows, especially pastoral cows, Iwe, Samburu, Somali, Borana, a lot of the cows got exterminated. And you can guess now what followed. You can guess what followed. A very, very serious famine in 1899. 1888, 98, 99. Very serious. Very serious. Which spread all over. Because even the wildlife which people used to shoot and eat, gone. So, 1899, the whole place is faced with this very serious famine. Did the people die? People died. Very seriously. A quarter of the Kamba community perished. And 50% of the Maasai, nearly 50%, they perished because of the famine. Because what they eat and their livestock is gone. It was serious. So if you go back to your history, even where it doesn't matter where you come from, ask the elders to tell you about rinderpest. Rinderpest. It has a name, local name. It has a local name. Depending on where you come from, it will have a local name. So we are looking at colonialism and the effect it had on local systems. So after rinderpest, of course, many people died. After rinderpest, the other significant event that affected food systems and food is World War I. World War I. But before the World War I, now that Maasai, Samburu, people didn't have food. What did they do? They went to work for the colonial government. Even if they are given peanuts, it doesn't matter. You leave your home and go to work for the colonial government. Now, I want you to see something here. Do you see now the local people are exposed? They have to work for the colonial government to earn an income because their sources of livelihoods are gone. Then came World War I. I think you know the history. You know the history. And of course, in the East African region, it was pitted against the Germans in Tanzania and British here. But many communities had to be brought in as carriers and also to fight for the British, especially for Kenya. I want us to build this story so that at least you can see some why people do things the way they do, especially in Kenya. So now, when colonialism came in, of course, and these events took place, the people are exposed. What follows? Series of famines, from World War I all the way to the next World War. Series of famines, because the people are exposed. Then came World War II, 1939. World War II, 1939. It's the same story. It's the same story. But now in this case, a lot of that was not fought here. That war, for Kenyans, I'm talking about Kenyans. A lot of that was not fought here. Where was it fought? It was pitted against the Japanese in Burma. And so the British had to get support from the local people, soldiers from local people, and take them to Burma to fight there. Let's get this, because as I told you, I'm building a story. Now, as the colonial government established itself, there's one important thing they did. Not important in the sense of importance, but significant. And that is because people came to get employed in the colonial government, and they didn't have a lot to support their families. They were desperate. And so the local people were played, their psychology were played about with. And in was instituted a feeling of inferior, being inferior. Of course, if you are poor and you have nothing, you are inferior. I mean, you cannot bargain. Is it true? Yes, you cannot bargain. Because these people are exposed. And slowly by slowly, people lost their self-respect. Attitude changed. What is for the colonialists is the best. Ours not good. Even our color, our dressing is not good. Our food is not good. And so people started living what was theirs, including food. Including food. Their food. Because it was not good enough. It was second-hand. And then comes independence. In 1963, in the case of Kenya, 1961 in the case of Tanzania, 1962 in the case of Uganda, came independence. And the colonialists leave, and the people we are left with are people who are trained by the very colonialists. So in a way, this propagated what was left with them. Training institutions, those who are going to be trained in agriculture, in whatever. You don't learn Brenda, coffee. You learn about coffee. You learn about coffee, tea, and so on and so forth. And it took a long, long time. Even now, up to today, many of our agricultural officers still use those colonial systems for training. I'll come back to that later. Let's stop a little bit and step back again. Before the colonial government came in, many of the local people had sort of what we can call survival tactics. Huh? They had ways of surviving, even in the worst of famines. Like in the case of where I'm born, Ukambani, every time there would be some food security issue, women would carry gourds, we call it mbunge, these baskets. They weave these baskets, and they organize themselves into a caravan, and they go to Central Province. They go sell those things there, and back they bring food. Duma, they bring Duma, and so on and so forth, if there is food. It doesn't matter where, even in Meru, they go to Meru, they go to Embu, they go to all the way to Kirinyaga. So they had survival tactics. In case there is no food, that was the work of women. How about the men? The men would go hunting. Of course, hunting is not sustainable, but they would organize themselves into caravans and carry whatever they make, even carvings, and take them to Mombasa in caravans. It would take 7 days to Mombasa, reach there, sell their goods, especially to Arabs, and back with something. Those were survival tactics. But when the British came, all those avenues were stopped because people should move without authority of the chief. They shouldn't move. Where are you going? So these restrictions added to the woes which were there already. And you can see now, many of the communities became very, very vulnerable. Very vulnerable. Very vulnerable. Because other survival techniques were curtailed by the British colonial government, colonial government. Maybe I shouldn't use British, but colonial, because that's past now.